It's been reported by Fabrizio Romano that we are now in advanced talks with Botafogo to sign their goalkeeper, Victor John, for around 8 to 12 million quid in what is the latest instalment of a bit of a messy transfer saga, to be honest with you, in terms of West Ham trying to sign a goalkeeper. Now, before I talk about that, John wanted to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Drop a like on this video if you enjoyed it. It really helps us out and we really appreciate it. Now, if we believe everything we've read and heard in the last couple of weeks, the goalkeeping position is definitely something that the club have prioritised, and Kyle McCauley and Potter have favoured two names have been reported on this channel and on other channels and on social media over and over again, and those being Suzuki and Hermansen from Leicester. And it definitely felt it would be one of those two players that would end up coming into the club. It was just a toss-up between the two almost. And then at the back end of last week, out of nowhere really, Fabrizio Romano again reported that we put in an 8 million quid or euro offer for Botafogo's goalkeeper, Victor John, a name that I hadn't heard associated with the club before. I hadn't heard of, to be honest with you. And it sort of came out of nowhere. But again, this week, that looks like the one that we're pursuing. That looks like the deal that could be closest to actually happening. And it seems like it could even happen this week. And again, if we believe everything that we've read and heard and interpreted, it feels like it's very much a David Sullivan signing. And I think we can understand that based on the fee involved. Suzuki and Hermansen would, their clubs would demand much higher fees for their services. So it feels like it's a David Sullivan signing. And coupled with the Callum Wilson signing, it definitely feels like David Sullivan is pulling rank on transfers this summer. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and the dynamic between him, McCauley, and Graham Potter. But before that, the player himself has actually come under some scrutiny on social media, which always happens, to be honest, when a player is linked. You start to see clips on social media, lowlights, highlights of the player. And I just think it's fair to say that I won't judge him until I see him in a West Ham shirt. I think that's always fair with transfers. You don't know what they're like in a full 90 minutes until you see those full 90 minutes in a West Ham shirt. But the clips don't paint him in the best light, to be honest with you. He looks like he's very calamitous as a goalkeeper, definitely got a mistake in him. And like I say, it doesn't paint the best picture of a goalkeeper that's going to come in and battle Areola for the number one shirt. But there are some opposing views as well. Like a few people have pointed to the stats that he's achieved whilst he's been in Brazil. A few Botafogo fans have sort of come to his defence and said that he's actually a really good goalkeeper and he's blossoming late in his career, and he'll be a real asset to any club that signed him. So again, I think that points to the fact that we shouldn't judge him as a player until we see him in a West Ham shirt. There are goalkeepers in the past that you could put together some sort of low lights package of them, making mistakes and stuff, and you could reach the conclusion that they're not a good goalkeeper when in fact the opposite is true. So we'll see, and it's not his fault either. He's been offered a contract, if we believe these reports, and in talks with a club, and it's probably his dream to come to the Premier League and play, and he'll probably make much more money, will definitely make much more money in the Premier League than he does at the moment. So it only really points to one man being the issue. And again, it's very much, for me, like the Callum Wilson signing in that respect, in the fact that we are seeing now David Sullivan really pulling rank in terms of the transfer activity this summer. And I don't want to talk about the Callum Wilson deal in too much detail because it's been talked about before. And again, a lot of people sort of focused on Callum Wilson as a person and the sort of run-ins we've had with him in the past. The fact that he's 33 and he's injury prone. And I get all that. And I struggle with all those points as well. But the biggest sort of thing I struggle with in terms of the Callum Wilson signing is the fact that it means that we won't be signing a young, fit, pacey striker that we desperately need. We even saw it again against Bournemouth in the Premier League series friendly. There are going to be times this season we are playing counter-attacking football. We are penned in. Our wing-backs are sort of pinned back. And we are under a lot of pressure. And when you're playing that kind of football, again, which is something that we played a lot last season, the sort of box formation ends up being basically a 5 at the back, 3 in midfield, and then 2 up front. And you're very much relying on Bowen and Fulcrum just doing something together. And for large parts of that first sort of 20 minutes of the first half against Bournemouth, we saw that again. And again, that points to needing a striker with pace. I said it I had calls with Mark before on the channel and said, You can't play counter-attacking football unless you have pace, and we don't really have pace at the moment. And obviously we've got Somerville to come back and Guilherme to come in maybe, who can offer a bit more pace to the side. But for me, we just needed a striker to come in that had pace. But I don't want to talk about too much in that regard. But again, with the goalkeeping position, it's very much like this signing would mean that we're not signing a top goalkeeper that's going to be our number one for many years to come. I was quite excited by the fact that we could sign Suzuki, because he's very highly regarded and he's someone that has a high ceiling in terms of his potential. And I like that idea of signing a goalkeeper or signing any position that is going to be that position for the next 5 years. And if they're not, it's because they're sold for a high price, because a top 5-6 club have come in and gone, like, we want that goalkeeper and we'll pay whatever it takes. So that's what I was looking forward to, and this just doesn't represent that. And that doesn't mean to say he won't be a good signing, but again, it's more the dynamic between David Sullivan, McCauley and Potter that I'm concerned by. I mean, first of all, I mentioned this on a previous videos. Why would you, surely if you employ Graham Potter at a football club, you want the Graham Potter of Brighton. You want the Graham Potter who very much leans on the data aspect, who very much works with a recruitment setup to sign young players, blood them into the first team, and then sell them on for big fees or keep them in the side. You don't want the Graham Potter of Chelsea that was sort of just given players by the owners there and was just trying to muddle together an 11 each week, and it just obviously didn't work. Surely you want the Potter of Brighton. And yet the structure we've set up and the structure that we're pursuing this summer in terms of bringing players into the club and selling players is very much more like the Chelsea model than the Brighton model. And I just don't understand that. I don't get why you do that. In fact, it was put as a negative behind Potter and a reason that we didn't try and get Potter in previously to employ him is that he was only as good as the Brighton system behind him. Well, why not employ when you do employ him? Why not put the Brighton system behind him now? It's really frustrating. I don't understand it. Also, why pay compensation for McCauley to get him out of Chelsea? Why pay money to bring someone into the club and then not listen to his recommendations? Like, I know he's more of the recruitment side than a technical director, but even more so, he's not really interested in the nature of the deals. He's just, recommending players that we should be going after. You sort of put him in this position that he's not been before, and then don't listen to him anyway. Find it really odd. And also, again, why hire a technical director in Tim Steidten and tarnish all technical directors or directors of football with the same brush? And so once Steidten seemed like he failed, say, well, they're all no good, I might as well do it myself. I mean, how big's his ego to actually feel that way, that people that have made a business of being that position, either a technical director or director of football, and had success at doing so, and then you just say, no, I might as well do it myself. Again, I just don't see the value in that. If we believe Steidten's last window was a bad window, or last two windows, then that's still fairly minimal compared to the amount of bad windows that we've had with David Sullivan running transfers. So again, it just feels like we're not using logic there. It's just very much following the ego of one man. And again, I just want to talk about the two positions that we've, I think messed up, to be honest with you. I feel like the goalkeeper and striker positions were massive priorities. I've said that the centre midfield position is something that I would have put first and foremost and sorted as early on as possible. But after that would have been the striker position and then the goalkeeping position. And again, it just feels like we've gone cheap. And there's always this saying, you buy cheap, buy twice. And I would be very surprised if we're not entering the market either next summer or either January or next summer for either a striker or goalkeeper, or even both in the worst case scenario. We're just not learning, are we? We're just not signing players that are young and just going to grow in and be that position and sort of occupy that position for the next 3, 4, 5 years, unless they get a big offer and go to another club. And you look at Potter and McCauley's, choice. If we believe what we've heard, their choice was very much just to sign for the left wing back or left back position. And look how well he's done so far. I mean, 2 unbelievable crosses. Again, it's pre-season, you take it with a pinch of salt. But he looks like he could be a real asset for us going forward. Surely that's enough evidence already to say, okay, this is what we should be leaning on. Not, someone that's been doing transfers for a few years now and has been getting most of them wrong. You know, David Sullivan has signed a lot of strikers under his watch, and we're yet to see one that's flourished. And in fact, the only one that looks like he could be promising is Nicholas Fulcrook, who was a Tim Stein signing. So, yeah, I'm finding it very frustrating at the moment. I'm sure you are as well. And it just feels like we are really messing up this transfer window, to be honest with you. And it's not, like I say, it's not Victor John's fault. If he comes to the club, I hope he does really well. I'm sure that there's definitely sort of positives to his game. But this is turning out to be a little bit of a mess of a transfer window for West Ham. But yeah, anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.